Well, good morning and welcome to Primetime at the Bethel University Library. Primetime is a collaboration of the Friends of the Bethel University Library and many offices on campus, whose mission is to encourage lifelong learning beyond the classroom and for the entire Bethel community. Looking ahead, on Thursday, March 8th, join us as Edwin scholars Dr. Stephen Self and Grant McEachern present their project, Modena F 9.9, Clues from an Italian Renaissance Manuscript. If that doesn't make any sense to you, come on Thursday.
I was like, what?
It involves music, I know that. Today we welcome a Faculty Excellence Award winner for teaching, Dr. Nancy Brule of Communication Studies. Every year for the last 25 years, I think it is now, Bethel faculty have chosen among their own faculty members to recognize for their excellence in service teaching and scholarship. So it's a significant recognition on the part of the faculty of our colleagues and the excellent work that they've done in each of those areas. So it's exciting to have Nancy talking to us on the topic. And then I fell off the stool I shouldn't have been standing on in the first place. Please welcome Nancy.
The hardest part was trying to come up with a title for the presentation. Well, it's kind of nerve-wracking to be up here talking about teaching with all the teachers in the audience. I want to thank you, first of all, for the honor for teaching. Actually, that was my first teaching award I've ever won, which was really exciting for me. And so I want to thank my colleagues in the communication department for being such outstanding colleagues and supporters and for putting up with me. The administrators who have put up with my idealism. And finally, I want to thank the students at Bethel University for making this place what I believe the place that it is. And I suppose after watching the Oscars, I should thank my husband for his support, my very handsome husband for his support. Brad Pitt ain't got nothing on him. Anyway, my teaching career almost ended actually before it began when I was teaching my first interpersonal class as a grad assistant, realizing I was older than average and 30 at the time, at Mankato State. And I called a very fine young man up to the front of the room. I do a lot with having kids become involved in concepts and acting out things such as that. And so his name was Gordy. He was about 6'3", very built, strong, good-looking kid. And he had everything going for him, great personality, just very nice looking. And I remember teasing him in front of the class, like I often do. I'm a big teaser with my students. I always tell them, I say, I'm going to tease you, but that's because I like you. So tell me before you start to cry if I've gone over the line, all right? For example, he was up there and there was a big height difference, and I said, well, thank you for being my living example. And I reached around to pat him on the back. He's 6'3", and I ended up getting him right on the butt, okay? And I blushed. The class went, oh, the class was gasped, you know. And now I'm not one to blush, but I turned like Nebraska Husker red, and I was just beat red, and I'm like, I'm sorry. And I repeated over and over, and I could see actually that my teaching career was probably going to end in a big sexual harassment suit even before I got started. But Gordy, being the good-natured kid that he was, he said to me, oh, that's okay, Nancy, I kind of enjoyed it. He said, and thus began my classroom career. It has been an adventure ever since. Since then, I've taught interpersonal and small group, and intercultural, and methods, and theory, and intercultural persuasion, oral interp, abusive relationship, advanced interpersonal conflict, family comm. I've taught at Mankato State, I've taught at Northern Michigan University, taught at the University of Nebraska, Wheaton College for 3 years, and then finally, I'm on my 8th year, going on my 8th year right now at Bethel College, and I am home, and I feel like I am home. Basically, I love to create curriculum. I love to create online classes. I love to challenge students, find creative ways to do that. And I am, I guess you could say, right where God has me, where He wants me for this phase of my life. So today I'd like to briefly present, if that's possible for a preacher and a calm person, why good teaching means so much to me. Some stories that I've experienced, some I told you so's that I always wanted to say to students that I never have, and what I think makes for a good teacher, some practical things that I do in the classroom, and last but not least, I would like to address the idea forms, because I know everybody's dying about those. So first and foremost, and I know this is not a scholarly type of approach to why I teach, but this really is the motivation that has driven me for many years. And the one I think is most important, that we have a real firm reason of why we're doing what we do. Now, that is not a job, but it's something that we are truly invested in. And having grown up, why does teaching matter so much to me? I've raised 3 outstanding children, okay? And I'm not just saying that as a mother, because if you knew all the problems they put me through, you'd be amazed I could still call them outstanding, okay? But I have truly raised 3 outstanding children, okay? I am a mother. All of them are leaders. They're inquisitive, they're intelligent, they're talented, they're independent thinkers, very well-read. All currently teach at a college or university in communication studies. So they took that on, and they could read well in 8th grade. They could read at a college level. They were reading books that I had never even heard of at that point and understanding them. And in other words, they were a mother's joy and they were a teacher's nightmare at that age, which soon became a mother's nightmare for me, as I struggled to deal with children who were bored, who could see through the busy work, and began to look for adventure and challenge in all the wrong places. And if you have perfect children, or what I call compliant children, then you don't know what I'm talking about, okay? But if you have challenging children, those who question God, they question their faith, unfortunately, they question their teachers, and some teachers don't really take to that. They question any form of the status quo. My boys, I am sure, have a file in the FBI building somewhere, all right? I have no doubt about it, I'm sure of it. When my middle child was an undergrad, he got involved in some not good activities, and I remember as a mother praying and praying and praying, Lord, please send somebody into his life to reach him. Please send somebody in his life to touch him. And so the second year of his school, his last 3 weeks of the second semester, all of a sudden I see a U-Haul in my yard, and he had dropped out of school with 3 weeks left to the semester. These were the challenges, and he says, Mom, I don't need to do that, it's stupid, and the whole list went on. He did end up finishing at the University of Nebraska. I'm just talking about my middle child. He ended up going to grad school in Milwaukee. He ended up becoming a crack addict. He ended up selling drugs. And when I first began here, what a lot of people didn't realize is that I would drive. I would get done with class on Thursday. I taught Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'd get the class done on Thursday, leave right away to drive to Milwaukee so I could spend the weekend and the week ministering to my son, and then late Monday night driving back to be home in time, 8 o'clock for my 8 o'clock class on Tuesday morning. And that was life. And I often think how much I prayed, and as a youth minister and in family ministry, how often that we have reached out to kids where you really just reach other parents' kids, where others depend on you to touch their kids. And so therefore teaching really to me is a ministry of reaching other parents' kids. What moves me, what drives me, what makes me passionate about what I do is the idea that I know how often I cried and prayed for somebody to make a difference in his life. And it wasn't until he graduated from master's school, surprisingly enough, somebody hired him down in the Missouri University in Rolla, Missouri, and one man took him under his wing, a teacher. He became his mentor. He taught him professionalism. He taught him what it meant how to use your art and your talents in the classroom and be able to impact others' lives. And Aaron got very excited. And what happened, actually, his second year on the job, he won their Faculty Excellence of Teaching Award as a new young teacher. Why do I say this? I say this because it takes a professor or a minister or a person out there who cares about somebody else's kid oftentimes to make a difference. We all know that we care about our own kids, but who's caring for our kids while we're caring for other kids? And really it's not an academic reason of what's going on, of why I do this. It's because I truly believe that it takes one person that can just totally change a person's life. Each one of my children had some similar struggles, and when they got to the point where one person set them straight. And I know it was through the prayer, and God places everything the way it's supposed to be, but it takes a vessel. So I view teaching not as a job, not as a career. I really view it as a ministry. I view it as a calling, and I view it as a passion that I have. And the day that I no longer feel that will be time for me, I believe, to find a different job. Every time I'm in a classroom, when I walk into the classroom, these kids are, I think of my own kids. They come in, They're looking, they're searching, they're struggling, a lot of them. They're challenging, some of them very challenging. Trying to become who God intends them to be. And as teachers, we have the ability to grab hold of a student and get their hold of their minds and their souls and their dreams and their visions and challenge them and give them flight, and then to help them fly as we kick them out and say, now don't do it. But this idea is that when I'm challenged by a student, I think to myself that I may be the answer to someone's desperate prayer. And therefore, I look for other ways besides the normal pedagogy and the normal ways of teaching to reach that one or two or however many students there may be. For those of us in school who are teachers, this is one avenue maybe God has given us to reach their lives. Which means that, therefore, what does teaching do? And as we look at it makes our lives exciting. I'll tell you a few stories about things that really have stuck with me. I remember once at the Northern Michigan University when I was first started teaching there, a young man, one of the exercises was they had to write a paper about their self-concept and their identity and things such as that. And I said, what I want you to do is I want you to write the good things about yourself. You know, and one of my requirements in my classes are you always have to finish all the assignments or you don't finish the class. I don't flunk you, but you get an incomplete until everything's done. So this kid sat there and he said, Nancy, I can't write this. And I said, there's got to be something good about you that you know about yourself. He goes, no. And finally he says, one day my dad told me that I was the poorest investment he's ever made. And this kid and I said, okay, So I said, well, we can find something. I said, well, what about your sense of humor? I don't have a sense of humor, but actually he did. What about your ability to write well? Well, I don't really write that well. Everything I would give him, it was, I don't do. And so finally I was like, well, you got beautiful teeth, And he kind of looked at me, and who'd think like that statement? And he's like, I do have nice teeth. You have. I was like, oh, I found it. You have beautiful teeth. And that kid was like, and it seems like a little thing and like an odd thing, but that was where the level that this young man could relate. I remember when I was teaching in Lincoln, at the University of Nebraska. I loved teaching down there, Bill Huskers. And I loved having football players in my class. A lot of people didn't like getting them, but they were some of your best students because they had to keep their GPAs up. They had tutors. I mean, it was great. But I remember one morning I was teaching. I would teach, and I always, oftentimes, once a semester at least, sometimes I'll buy pizza for my classes. Depends how much I like the class. No, I'm just kidding. But as this has gone along, my morning class said to me, Nancy, you never buy us pizza. And I realized Nebraska classes were huge, 40, 45 students in some of those classes. And so I said, but it's morning. And they go, we like pizza in the morning. And so I'm like, we'll see. Okay. So that night, a couple nights later, I bought 16 pizzas at night from Domino's Pizza. So I had them in my apartment all night long sitting there, put them on a roller cart the next morning, got onto the bus with my 16 pizzas, brought them to class, cold pizza, and there was not a piece left. And what was that? It was, why would I do something like that? It was a matter of creating this community in the classroom. All of a sudden, they were like, oh, we had pizza this morning. Here's what our teacher did, and here's what we did. And everybody was talking to everybody, and everybody else was talking to people they didn't know, and things such as that. So that was one of the things that I remember. I remember when I was at Wheaton, I would wear a dress because they had to wear dresses there, and at the time, and I was sitting on a desk, student's desk. You're sitting on a desk. I always tell my students not to sit on the desks, and the desk flipped over, and over I went, and I was wearing a dress. Okay, luckily it was a long dress, but I was still wearing a dress. And I'm like, and I just kept on lecturing, got up as I'm going along, still lecturing, and wasn't embarrassed, just whatever the case may be. In persuasion, here at Bethel, teaching letters from a skeptic in my persuasion about civil discourse and having them brief it down and strategize. And one of my key moments for me, that's about 3 years ago, is when this one kid says to me, he says, why do I have to know what I believe? This is hard. And I said, yes, it is. And that was just, for me, that was a moment in teaching that really hit me. I remember saying you guys, the Minnesota generic you guys, and being down in Nebraska, and being written up by a male student who said I was sexist, and there's no way he could get a good grade in my class, and blah, 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 and wrote me up, got called into the chair's office because this kid couldn't get an A. I don't know what his problem was, but he wrote me up into the to the department chair's office I go, it was a Minnesota generic, you guys. Now I always define you guys when it happens to slip out. I will go, that's a Minnesota generic, you guys. Some things that, and I could keep on going. How many times I went up the hill at Wheaton because I said things that were out of the norm, or I challenged sometimes in a way that worked with the students but might not work with administration or some of the very conservative students. Highlights, as I like to refer to them, I told you so, but I never say. Thinking about students that sometimes we have to do for them what they don't know has to be done. We have to teach them things they don't think they may ever use. And I remember teaching this young woman impromptu speeches, and we did a lot of classes, and she just would just very publicly in the classroom just challenge me on why do we have to do this. I'm never going to use this. And about 2 years later, she was walking on campus, and I hear this, Nancy! And she goes running up to me, and she goes, Nancy, I just have to tell you this story. She said, I was at a job interview, and I was narrowed down to the last two, and they called us both into the room. It was for a supervisory type of position. And she says, we sat there, and we got down to it, and they said, well, here's what we want you to do. We want you to stand up and give an impromptu speech. And so she got up, and she was, Nancy, she said, I had an introduction, I had a preview statement, I signposted, and I'm like, I had all I could do. I said, I told you so. But she did get the job because of her speech that she ended up giving. SPSS is another one in methods. A lot of students don't think, why do I need methods? I'm never going to use it. Not realizing that it's not just social science people who use methods. It's if you're a pastor, you should be able to run analysis. If you're working a job, you're going to have to do surveys and create surveys. This one young woman, again, I get a lot of emails later as students get into life. This one said that she was a human resource assistant, and she was working, and the company had asked them to do a survey about morale in the workplace or whatever it was. And she said the supervisor didn't know how to do this. And she goes, and the boss says, does anybody here know how to run a survey and analyze data? And her hand went up. She goes, I can. And so she was put in charge of this project. Did SPSS, analyzed the data, created the instruments, all this and that. And she was so excited. She ended up taking that supervisor's job. Based on that one experience. She goes, I'm so, Nancy, I couldn't believe it. You said we would use it. I didn't believe you. Things such as that. I wanted to say, I told you so. But I didn't. Again, pastors who are educated, to me this is a real passion of mine, turning out educated Christians who are educated about relationships and families and conflict and all these different, how to run a group, a small group in a church, and how to deal with some of these types of issues. People who are speaking out of expertise rather than just what they've been taught and carry forth. Much like that young man who said, why do I have to know this? It's too hard. Finally, and obviously for Bethel and for my students, is this idea of conferences where our communication students are right now excelling. The communication department at Bethel, a lot of you probably don't realize what we're actually really doing at some level in the research area. For the past number of years, we've sent students to conferences. I've been averaging about 20 students a year who competitively submit their papers. This year we submitted papers. There were 99 submissions, competitive submissions of the Undergraduate Honors Conference at our regional conference. 33 were accepted. 19 of those came from Bethel, and 3 of the top 5 papers were Bethel communication students receiving the awards. We leave in 2 weeks, and I'm taking 30 kids on a bus, thanks to Eric, maybe he doesn't know that yet, but to a bus to present their papers. What has happened is schools have called them up. They've gotten them into graduate programs, giving them assistantships. This is what we do for a teacher. A lot of these kids are kids who never thought they would go on to graduate school, never thought they could do more than just graduate and get a job, who are beginning to say, maybe I can do more, maybe I can do more. Maybe I can do more. And that's what we are as teachers, is to inspire them, encourage them, and lift them up and send them on. What do I think makes a good teacher? Realize that I am idealistic, and a lot of times it gets me in trouble. I have very high expectations for my students, very high expectations, and you can ask any one of them. And I expect the best from them because I expect the best from myself as a teacher. Because if I'm going to expect something from them, I have to be willing to give the same amount of energy and effort into it that I ask them to do. And we kind of have this deal, and when I walk into classes, I say, okay, here's what you can expect from me. I'm going to work you hard, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But here's what else. I will get your papers back on time. I will help you grow. I will not let you out there not knowing what to do. I will always be available to you on my time schedule. This comes into play. So what do I think is a good teacher? I think connection is key with students, because once you're connected, they will tell you things, they will share things in discussions that they wouldn't often share at any other time. I have my classes, you walk in and it's organized chaos. I always call it organized chaos, just to make myself feel better, no? But really, in my mind, it is organized. I know exactly what's going on in there, even though if you walk, many of you may have stuck your heads in my rooms and go, Nancy, could you go a little bit down? I'm like, they're just talking. And they're also excited about what they're talking about. They're talking loudly, all right? Caring, really actually caring about our students, caring whether they succeed or whether they fail. I don't believe, I mean, sometimes students have, I understand that students have to fail in order to learn. I understand that. But even then, in my mind, that is a form of succeeding. There comes a point where a line, I think, has to be drawn for all students, knowing I had one student 3 times in the same class. And he just kept coming and coming and coming, and I was like, okay, are you going to pass it this time? You know, we had developed such a good rapport by that point. You know, I could kind of tease him a little bit about that. Compassionate. A lot of times we forget that. We think of these students as kids. We forget the fact that they really are young adults, and they have lives. And almost all of them have jobs, and they have families, and they have other commitments that they have to attend to. And so therefore, school is just another aspect for them oftentimes at Bethel. And what I've noticed about Bethel that was not true at some of the other schools I taught at, is that these students here, at least the ones in my class, they make a decision of what they want to do. And then they're okay with getting the grade for it. So they work at a certain amount and they go, you know, this is a C, I don't want to work anymore. So then my challenge as a teacher says, how do I get them to that B or strive for that A level when they've made a decision here? In our APA class that I teach, not APA class, I teach Perspective, which is our theory class, intro to all of our majors, and they have to learn APA in that class. That's where we teach them to write for our discipline. 40 students have to write for our discipline. I couldn't do it without my wonderful TA right there, Corey Keller, give a wave. All right? And so they turn it in. They can't just fail it. They have to get a B. They have to get an 8 or above on it. They're each worth 10 points, 5 worth 10 points. And they keep doing them over, and they keep doing them over, because if you don't learn to write APA, flunking you is not going to help you learn how to write APA. Rather, I'm going to force you to learn how to write APA. And the deal is, when they start the classes, they don't get a grade for the class until they have successfully completed 5 APA assignments at an 8 or above. And we provide tutoring, and we provide opportunities for revision, and they can email, and they can do whatever the case may be. They'll get their grade once they finish that requirement for the class. And what has happened is that we've seen the level of writing in our department go up as a result of that. Challenging of potential, obviously, I think a good teacher needs to do that. A teacher needs to be very creative and understand that there's more than one way to think about things, and that our way is not always the right way. And I always find it intriguing when students speak and provide interesting things I never thought about. I'm like, I never thought about it that way before. And being open to this idea that there's other ways to interpret theory, other ways to interpret philosophy or religion or whatever. The courage to be who you are and to let students see who you are. I mean, I fall off desks. Okay? I mean, I just do all these, I say things that I wish I could take back and I can't. I mean, I apologize when I have to. It's just, that's who you are and who I am as a teacher. A teacher has to be very courageous, I believe. They have to be courageous in knowing who you are, be courageous to let students be who they are, to let students challenge the truth. And this, for me, is a big one. A lot of times I think we get nervous because students will come to me. I had one methods student group came to me and they go, we want to study if living together impacts relational satisfaction. I mean, those are questions that sometimes we don't do that, do something else, you know. Those types of tough questions. Or we want to interview children whose parents have divorced while they were in college. These are areas that are so interesting to our students because they're asking questions. Oftentimes they're contemplating something, and so therefore their way of exploring it, maybe do the research, read the literature, things such as that. And we have to trust that we have to trust God there. Because if God's word is true and truth, we could test it up, down, all the way around, and it will come out true. And I think sometimes we're afraid of that, or afraid of maybe sometimes the interpretations. And if it doesn't, if their survey's flawed, and they find this, and I go, well, why do you think you found this when this research says that? Tell me what about your survey could reveal that, or whatever the case may be. You can't be afraid that God's truth won't hold. And our methods class, I think, is a huge judge of that. I teach methods for a lot of method students. They do a full-blown research project from start to finish every semester. I'm looking at 10. Right now, they're working in groups of 2 to 3. And so that's 10, pretty much 10 papers, because we have 30, even though it's cap lower. We have a lot of students that need to take it. And the work in that class, I can't begin to tell you. The reward in that class, I cannot begin to tell you. And it's very interesting to me when I get those letters where you are the top 10% of, you know what I'm talking about, those letters, for methods. And I get it for theory classes. And that really, for me, as we talk about this, is that this idea of that pushing students hard, students want to be pushed. In my mind, they want to be pushed. We have to be able to cajole them in that pushing. We have to manipulate them, all for the glory of God, to help them be who and what they really can be. And then again, I think we have to expect the absolute best. And unless some of you think I'm idealistic, and to me that's not idealistic. That's what a teacher, I believe, has a passion to do. But what are some practical things I do 99% of the time with a significance level of 0.0001, okay? I have class all the time. Even when I can't be there, I have class. I arrange them to have class. And this comes into play with great interns. I work them hard, and this is college, and I work them hard. And recognizing, however, when they need a break, or maybe when they've been pushed too hard, I recognize the fact that, okay, you know what, you guys? We need to do something different today. Let's take a break, meaning do something fun, an applied activity. My idea of fun is applying the theories and things they've learned already through videos or whatever. Test them hard. I give extremely hard tests. Remember, tests should be used as a learning tool, not just to give them a grade. I want them to go through now and synthesize the materials. So I give them outline sheets or whatever. And it's still amazing to me when kids will get C's or D's on tests, and I'm like, you had pretty much the test, Don't accept assignments that are sloughed through. Give them back. You know what? I know you can do better than this. I know you can do better than this. It's kind of funny because once I had my youngest son, I homeschooled him, and part of that was when I was at grad school, so he would come to classes with me, and I'd actually have to do some homework and that. And I let him get up and give speeches, and he gets up and he would never cite his quotes. And so he'd get up there, and he'd give him a speech, and I gave him a grade. I said, that's a C speech. He goes, Mom, that was better than anybody else's speech in the whole class. I go, doesn't matter. I know you can do better. Isn't it terrible having your mom as a teacher? And then he didn't cite anybody. So the next time he gets up, he gives a speech. He's given this speech, and he gives this quote, and he goes, and that was by, he stops and doesn't know who it's by, I'm sure. And he goes, God. I'm like, okay, I can't argue that, all right? And he goes, see, Mom, I cited my sources. Ask them what time it is when they come in late regularly. Oh, so-and-so, do you know what time it is? Because remember, we've already developed a connection where we can tease in that way. And if that doesn't help, I'm not saying kids who come every now and then late. I'm talking about consistent kids who come late and late. Pop quizzes that can't be made up are always a good way to solve the coming late problem. Within that first 5 minutes of class, collect them all. Can I make up the quiz? No. And all I have them do oftentimes is write their name down on a paper. Build community and don't allow cliques or groups in class. I'm always mixing up my students. I'm always saying, okay, I want you to go sit by somebody you don't know. And when they don't move, guess what? I make them move. Or I make somebody come over and sit between them then. And that helps prevent a lot of times that discussion, those tight-knit little groups that get off on their own tangents sometimes. I give halfway through the semester evals, personal evals for me, so I know what's going on in the class. Sometimes I think it's going well, and you can feel, we all know how you can feel, but I really want to know what the students think. What can I improve? It's very simple. Give me 2 things I can improve on. Okay, give me 1 thing that you like, and give me 2 things I can improve on, because I don't want just a big negative. about the class. But I don't really care about the good one. I want to see what's not working right now in this class. And that's very valuable because sometimes I'll change in mid-year how I'm doing things or how quickly I address a problem. Why wait till the end of the semester when it's become full-blown? Why not fix it as we're going along? Revise and resubmits. Depending on the class, I'm there to teach them skills of academia. One thing I do is I prepare a day ahead for the whole week. Monday's on my prep day. I don't spend my week prepping. I spend that one day prepping all my classes. So all I do is grab folders throughout the week. You'll hear me in my office frantically going, where's that folder, where's that folder? But then I'm ready to go and I can really enjoy the teaching process and don't have to worry about am I prepped, am I not prepped, where's my videos, where's my activity, things such as that. Humor is huge. I need to find jokes or stories or things of interest to get their attention. This is getting harder and harder as I get older and older. But yet, I have found that one thing that really connects my classes are stories about my rescue dogs. I rescue dogs, and I have this big one that's he's very aggressive in a sense. Well, wait, he is. All right. And so I tell them stories about Wrigley, and I relate that into some of the concepts. And we talk about, like, once Wrigley was in a dog park, and a guy went like this, and so really attacked him, basically. Yeah, he did attack him. And so I'm wrestling this dog down, And so I tell this story, I have them laughing and they're getting into it, and then I say, okay, now, based on the different definitions of domestic violence, what of the 4 categories, where does this fall? And tell me why. And so all of a sudden they're engaged and they're enjoying this, but yet and I know they've heard it because it's a story. We're narrative, as calm people, we know we're narrative. Humans, we like to have narration and stories. Many times my kids tell me, my mom wants I always go home and tell my mom your stories that you tell in class. So now I gotta watch what I tell in class. But anyway, be real. I don't know all the answers. Play devil's advocate, and when I'm doing that, I put little horns on my head so that they all know I'm playing devil's advocate. That I'm not that I don't agree with what you're saying, but this is getting me to think critically. Set the rule that no one can talk when others are talking. That's a huge one for me. You'll hear me go, I'm like Caesar the dog whisperer. And sometimes I'll have to go, okay, wait. And I'll turn. Give the evil mom eye, you know how that goes. Train good interns and use them. Interns are with the size classes I have, with the amount of work that I have been doing, my students do in my classes, if I didn't have interns, I would be caught up in the daily management of papers versus working on the teaching. They grade all my objective assignments. I grade all my subjective assignments and the writing stuff. I share my life, the good, the bad, the struggle, the doubt, the questions, and I let them share theirs. And probably most important is I follow the leading of the Holy Spirit in the classroom. And there are times where right in the middle of a class, I'll just get a sense that God wants to do something in my spirit, and I'll stop and I'll ask questions, or I'll say, it looks like you want to say something. What would you like to share about this topic? And then they will talk and begin talking among themselves. That was just some of my list. I didn't have time to go through because I want to leave some time for questions. But some say, I want to cover the idea forms. I've heard so much about idea forms lately. And, we're not all able to just, some say I don't look at them and I throw them away or whatever the case may be. But some of us aren't able to do that. We're trying to get tenure, we're trying to get promotion, things such as that. And so therefore they look at these idea forms as some sort of measure or scale. But you know what? I like them. I would use them anyway. In fact, even though I only do one a semester, I still do idea forms in most of my classes. Because I want to know what am I doing in that class that can be improved upon. And I think we as teachers have to look at those what I do is I go through and I say, okay, that makes sense. I should look at that. That doesn't really apply, and that can get very difficult sometimes. Sometimes, some of them are harsh. So one I got said, she's a lazy teacher. I was like, what? I didn't know where that came from, and I thought, well, what could have given her that idea that I was a lazy teacher? And I realized I had broke my own rule, and I had taken one assignment, it was a paper, and had given it back like 2 class days later. So she thought I was being a lazy teacher. Works is too hard, tests are too hard. Good. That to me is a positive, not a negative. And so you go through and you look at some of these and you have to have enough confidence in yourself as a teacher that you say, yes, this is something I need to change. Things such as organized, disorganized. She seems disorganized. Well, actually, I know I'm not disorganized, but what can I do to communicate that it's organized chaos? And I really do mean I say organized chaos. Changes the syllabus. Yeah, I do. I got to stop doing that. And so how do I do that? I loosen the syllabus up a bit. Maybe I drop a few things off the syllabus so that I can always add them in if they're not tests or papers, but I don't try to get a chapter done a day or whatever the case may be. One semester, she's all over the place sometimes. And she'd say one thing and she'd write another on the board. That was and I thought about that. Why would I do that? And then it occurred to me that was the semester I had fallen and I had a very bad concussion, and I decided I could come and teach anyway. And so I spent like the next 2.5, 3 weeks in a fog, and I would be talking about one thing and I would write something else on the board. And I dawned on me and I was like, that could be an injury related, because I don't normally do that, you know. So therefore, I decided that next time I'm going to take advantage and take a few days off from work. So we need to be secure in our teaching, to evaluate honestly what our students think about our teaching. Change what we know to be true. Value their opinions. These are people who see us in a way we don't see ourselves. And yet, to throw out as well those things that we know they are seeing from a different perspective and why we're doing something. Well, I'm too short most of the time, and I can't change that. Short meaning short. And one of the reasons I gave this title to the conference is I was teaching at the University of Nebraska, and there was a DVD player. It's the old days, I had them way up. And so the only way I could reach it was I got on a three-legged stool, those steel three-legged stools. It's pretty tall, like that. So I got on the stool, I climbed up in the stool, and I realized there's these 6'3", 6'4" football guys sitting there, okay? And they're all sitting there watching me, and normally I would have asked them to do it, but I was like, oh, well, I'll just do it myself. I got up on there, reached to turn on the DVD, fell off the stool, okay, came up against those corners of the chalkboards, came up against them, ripped my pants all the way down the back of my leg, cut my leg, so there was bleeding all over, okay? And then my football guys, wonders I love them so much, they're so sarcastic, and they said to me, they go, oh, can we get out of class now? And I said, no, this is very important, what you have to learn. Who has a stapler? And so a girl came up, I'm teaching, she's stapling the back of my pants as I'm teaching. I mean, the reason I did that was to prove to these guys, you know, and after that day, every day somebody said, can I get that for you, Nancy? And therefore, you know what? God is using us even in the days we have bad days of teaching, and we're going to reach too high sometimes. And we'll push ourselves, we'll push our students too hard, and then we're going to fall off the stool, we're going to hurt, we may end up bleeding, we may end up struggling in how we're feeling, but we decide whether we will keep teaching or not, and whether it's important enough to us to keep teaching. We are building a community. We're engaging not in a job, but in a ministry and a calling. And in the end, when we look at that and determine whether what we're doing is important or not, we realize this. I don't know about you, but I'm willing to get right up back on that stool and try to reach for it again. So, thank you. Do you have questions or comments or sarcastic remarks I would say to my students?
When you were talking about idea evaluations, you really weren't talking about idea evaluations. You're talking about what the students write, as opposed to the bubble scores.
I look at both.
Yeah, but what they write seems to me to be the much more valuable.
Exactly, I agree with that. Sometimes they won't write things, but I'll have a low in something like some rating, whatever, and I go in and I look like, why would that be? Because we manage our classrooms in my mind. We should be able to manage and adapt and strategize in order to make it. I'm not saying it's easy, and I think, you know, I'm an interpersonal person, so maybe it's a little bit easier for me because I read people differently, but still I believe I'm the captain of the ship and it either sinks or sails because of me. I hear a lot of people blaming students all the time, and that irritates me. I know we have bad students, I have them too. So I just don't let it do that in my mind. I don't feel it. I know. Other thoughts? Well then, as I would say to my students, go forth and do not multiply.